Hi.
Hi, Mr. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you too.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this interview. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So this is your first broadcasting interview, right?
First broadcast interview in Korea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks to give me this opportunity.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Of course. Yeah, thanks for the question. I got the readout from the president's speech this morning, but he only gave it a few hours ago. So I really haven't had a chance to digest it completely. But I will say that in general, our view, the American view, is that we want to see progress toward denuclearization. Yeah, I don't have really a view on Kim Jong-un's visit. I mean, that's between President Moon and the Republic of Korea and Kim Jong-un and DPRK. So we'll see how that goes. As we work these issues, we want to do it in concert with the Republic of Korea. Whether it's the denuclearization, whether it's inter-Korea relations, or these visits, I think that the two countries, the two allies, should work closely on these issues. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to think about the UNESCO aspect of registering the DMZ. But I do believe that those steps that you mentioned should be done in consultation with us, and we'll work closely with our Korean ally and partner as we move forward on President Moon's suggestions. Yeah, I don't know why they come out. I think you're asking the wrong person. You should ask those people who make the comments. But I believe that the relationship is as strong as it has ever been and getting stronger. You know, we use the term ironclad for a reason, because it is ironclad. And I think by almost every measure of performance, whether you're talking in the security dimension, people-to-people ties, economics, investment, trade, I think that you will see that our relationship is growing. And it's growing leaps and bounds. Whether you're talking the numbers of Americans who come to Korea as tourists, and the number of Koreans who visit the United States as tourists. In the cultural dimension, we see BTS on Time magazine. We see them in New York at New Year's. And we're just seeing Director Bong and Parasite win the Golden Globe. So I think all of these are indicators of the incredibly strong relationship between our countries.
Okay. Did you watch the Parasite?
I have not watched it yet, but I want to.
Okay. So, do you know the song of BTS?
I don't. I have listened to BTS.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, and I've tweeted about BTS, and I've seen their Time magazine covers and all of that. It's pretty exciting. I think the whole K-pop revolution, if you will, in America. Well, let me begin by saying that we're not demanding that Korea do anything. We are asking Korea to consider helping in the Strait of Horsmuz in the Persian Gulf area. I believe, especially as a former naval officer, that it is in the interests of all nations to support freedom of the seas and freedom of navigation on the high seas. And I believe that Korea, who gets so much of your energy from the Middle East, this is a particularly important concept for the Republic. So I would hope that Korea will send forces out there. I know that the government is considering it, and I think that's important, and we appreciate that. And let me also just add, and I shouldn't have to remind you of all people of this, but it was only last November that 2 Korean ships were seized in the Gulf of, in the Red Sea by Houthi rebels. So that underscores to me, as much as anything else, the vested interest that Korea has for stability and freedom of the seas in that region. And I'll also add that the Houthi rebels are supported by Iran. I think first we should wait and see what Korea's decision is, and then welcome their contribution at whatever level they want to contribute. Well, I believe that that's certainly an issue, but I would be more concerned about the safety of Korean citizens that are in the Middle East, who don't have the training that military troops have.
Yeah.
And I know that there are about a little bit less than 2,000 Korean citizens in the whole Middle East region, and most of them, the majority of them, are in Iraq. And so, you know, the United States put out a travel advisory just a few days ago that called on all U.S. citizens, not their own official business, to leave for their safety. And perhaps Korea should do the same, but of course that's Korea's decision to make. Yeah, I don't have an opinion on how likely Chairman Kim Jong-un is liable to do anything. I think the important idea here is that with regard to North Korea, President Trump has kept the door open for diplomacy. And he has said that he would be disappointed if Chairman KJU violated the commitments that he himself made in Singapore, one of which is denuclearization. So I think it is a good thing that there was no delivery of an ICBM or a nuclear test over the course of the last week or so, but we'll have to see where it goes. The bottom line is that the door remains open for negotiation, even as we, and when I say we in this case, I mean the American and Korean forces remain ready for any eventuality.
If North Korea crosses the red line, like launching ICBM, what will the United States do? What's your plan?
Yeah, well, rather than telegraph what we would do in a hypothetical situation, I would prefer to simply state that we, again, the U.S. and Korean forces are ready for any eventuality. As Secretary Esper, the Secretary of Defense himself said, that we have to be ready, and we are ready to fight tonight if need be. I think his threat is real. I mean, you have, he's demonstrated nuclear capability. He has demonstrated long-range ballistic missile capability, and he threatens U.S. forces and citizens who live and work on the Korean Peninsula and in the region. So in that regard, he remains a threat to the United States, and we consider that threat seriously. Yeah, I think that now is not the time to relax sanctions. After all, it was these tough sanctions that brought Chairman Kim Jong-un and North Korea to the negotiating table in the first place, and tough sanctions will bring them back to the table, I believe. And Steve Biegun, you know, our lead negotiator for North Korea and is now the new Deputy Secretary of State, as he has said, we have offered creative ways, flexible ways, and flexibility to North Korea. But it's up to North Korea to come back to the negotiating table. And I think that, you know, negotiations are like jazz. You know, sometimes you have to improvise. Yeah. And I think that Steve Biegun and his team are doing that and doing it well, and we're now waiting for North Korea to return to the table. Yeah, so I don't want to talk specific numbers, and I think I never have. Okay. But I will say that Jim DeHart, our lead negotiator, has said that we've listened to the Korean negotiators, we've taken their arguments on board, and we've compromised, and we have new numbers. So I think that we're entering this last phase of negotiations in a good place, and those negotiations start next week in Washington. Mr. DeHart is optimistic, so we'll have to see where that goes. And as I've said in the past, and I'll say it again, I believe that as an equal partner in the preservation of peace on the peninsula, a country as prosperous as the Republic of Korea can and should do more. And what we are seeking in the United States, what we are seeking is simply a fair and equitable agreement. The specific numbers, that's up to the negotiators, and they are going to be at it again next week. You know, I'm not the negotiator, so I don't know how much of that is factored into the ultimate position that the United States makes. But again, I'll say that we have adjusted our position and we've compromised. So I think that those arguments and others have been taken into consideration by Mr. DeHart. And we'll just see where the negotiations go next week.
Okay, so in your opinion, what is the lower limit of cost that America accepts?
Yeah, I don't have an opinion that I'm going to share with you. As I said, I'm not going to talk numbers. You know, I think that we're at the stage now that the two negotiating teams, the American team and the South Korean team, they need to get at it without stray voltage from people like me on the outside looking in. I'll say that I'm glad, as a starter, I'm glad that the government of Japan and the ROK government worked this out. As President Trump has said, anytime the three countries, that is the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan get along, it's better for all of us when that happens. And so to see that both countries were able to work this out and get to the point that they're at now, I think that's a positive. And I'm encouraged by that. There are issues to be resolved, and I'm glad that both countries are working at almost all levels of the government to get these issues resolved amicably. Well, we were actively engaged in encouraging both countries to resolve these differences when the possibility of South Korea pulling out of the GSOMIA was evident. Now that both countries have worked this out, at least to the point that South Korea has agreed to not terminate the GSOMIA for the time being, I'm encouraged by that. And I would rather think positively and hope that both countries can continue to work out their differences rather than to think negatively about it. Again, South Korea doesn't have to participate in it. We are asking South Korea to participate as we are asking other countries to do so. I am pleased to talk about both the United States' free and open Indo-Pacific strategy and South Korea's new Southern policy. And I believe that both of these policies, these approaches, that they have common intersections. They have common intersections. And I think that it's good for all the countries in South and Southeast Asia when the United States and South Korea work together, which benefits those countries in a big way, I believe. Let me begin by saying that we simply withdrew from INF because of violations by Russia, right? And the INF treaty was, in essence, a bilateral treaty between the United States and the Soviet Union and then Russia. Though there are some successor states that are a part of it, but it's essentially a bilateral treaty. And when one country continues to violate the treaty, then it becomes unilaterally self-limiting on the part of the other country. And it places that country, the United States, and our allies and partners at risk. So it would be absurd to stay in that. Having said that, there are no plans today to put intermediate range missiles in Korea. We don't have them yet. We don't have these kinds of missiles yet. We just got through the INF, the treaty itself, and now we're considering what kinds of weapons to develop. So it's way premature to discuss placement of those weapons in Korea or any other country in the region for that matter. I don't have thoughts on that per se. I mean, China is not our enemy. Korea is our ally. I think it's interesting that China would object to missiles in Korea when you consider that the vast numbers of missiles that China has that can reach Korea, many of which would have been precluded by the INF Treaty if China were a signatory to that treaty. They're not a signatory to the treaty, so we can't expect them to follow that. But they have thousands of missiles that can reach Korea. That's what I would be concerned about if I were thinking about defending this country. Yeah, I'll say, of course, I am direct. But after 40 years in the military, most of it in command and much of it in combat zones, for me to be anything else would be disingenuous. And I think you, of all people, would call me out on it. Mm-hmm. Look, I do believe that that you'll sooner see a cat bark or a dog talk than you'll see me trying to equivocate or prevaricate. I think that the Korean people would want me to be direct and clear, rather than be something else and hope that they can read my mind. Mm-hmm. But let me also wish you and KBS and really all the viewers a Happy New Year. This is an exciting time. It's a big year ahead of us. It's a great time, I believe, for me and my family to be here in Korea. I've been here for about 18 months. Every day has been exciting. And I think that 2020 will be 366 days of excitement. And I'm glad to be here. I'm grateful for the opportunity.